For today's video I thought I would read out the first chapter of a book that I've written, and it's not published and it probably most likely won't ever get published, but I still very much enjoyed writing it and I do enjoy reading it, so I just thought that I would share the very first chapter with you guys. The story of the book is told from a number of different perspectives, and the first chapter is told from Rachel's perspective. And the book is called A Billion Times Me. Whoa. Okay. It's kind of small on here, but whatever. 1. Rachel. Rachel stared at the slimy mass before her through her big, round goggles. The long, flat magnet that she held in front of her eyes made the mass her own to control. It looked like a blanket. A large, slimy, disgusting blanket. Fully concentrated, she extracted a fluid from a test tube with her other hand and made it drop gently into the mass. Nothing happened. With a sigh, and still holding up the magnet, she began to scribble down another way to set up the experiment. She did not hear a door open, but suddenly she heard her father's voice. Slowly she turned around. Her father was peeking through the open door. He gave her a friendly smile. "Darling, it's 10 already. You should be in bed." Rachel nodded and pointed at the open experiment before her. With a shrug and a smile, he left her to continue. He had no idea what she was doing. In fairness, neither did she at the moment. But when Rachel turned back to the equipment table, a smile broke out over her face. So it had worked. The liquid she had dropped into the mass had settled in the middle, and was now changing colors. There was a puff noise and some smoke, which made her know she had created something. What? She could not tell. She pulled the smallish stone thing, was it a stone thing, out of the dark mass and wiped it on her lab coat. She looked at it with big eyes, but the only significant factor she could find was that it was of a color and material she could not recognize. It looked like glass, but it wasn't glass. It looked like a jewel, but it wasn't a jewel. She shrugged and tucked the thing in her trouser pocket for safekeeping. Then she noted everything in her small, scrawly handwriting. She threw the mass into the chemical waste bin and swapped the round goggles for her angular spectacles with a black frame. She took off her lab coat and hung it on a hook. It stood out quite a bit in that certain shade of pink, flashing laundry incompetence. Oh well. At least she had a lab coat. She released her dark brown, almost black, silky hair from its bound. It fell smoothly over her shoulders. Satisfied with the room's clean state, she left it, locking the door behind her. Her dad was reading a magazine. He stood up when he noticed her and smiled. "Proud of you, honey," he said. "Ready to go?" She let him help her slip on her coat, as it was winter and cold outside. It was a starless night, and darkness wrapped her into another coat, one that was as comforting as it was deceitful. Their footprints in the snow were significantly different in size. Rachel had tiny feet even for her tender age of 11, while her father had quite big feet even for a tall, grown man. They were greeted by the warm embrace that was her mother. Her thick red hair swirled around as she greeted them. As always, she was excited about everything. Rachel loved that about her, but it could also be highly annoying. "I could have sworn it was night, but the sun just came in," Angela Lay cried out and kissed her cheek. That was one of the things Rachel did not like about her mum, the fuss she made about her daughter. "How are you, my dear?" Angela asked, her blue, innocent eyes looking straight into Rachel's dark, deep ones. "I'm fine, Mum," she signed, which did not stop her mother from giving her a tight hug anyway. "I've made you some soup," she said excitedly. Rachel did not like soup. She especially did not like the soup her mother made. It usually contained burnt leftovers. It tasted like her mom meant to poison her. Rachel knew she was trying to be a great mom to her, but there were some things someone else should have taken care of. Cooking, to name a crazy example. Her dad mouthed "sorry" to her. He had already eaten. Rachel sighed noiselessly and sat down on the kitchen bench to obediently receive her bowl of soup. Angela gave her a large ladleful, which Rachel eyed suspiciously. But it did not taste half as bad as she had expected it to. "Now, Rachel, tell me," Angela Lake began, watching her with that concerned look in her eyes that Rachel so hated. "Are you sure that teacher isn't exploiting you, having you work late like that, when you've got school in the morning?" Rachel shook her head firmly. Professor Dent was not exploiting her. He had never asked anything of her. He had just been kind enough to help her do what she wanted to do. "I do think you ought to be home earlier on a school night. Your grades are down again." Rachel shrugged. Her grades were constantly bouncing. Her mother knew that as much as she did. "I'm just saying, you have to be careful not to get exploited." "I am not getting exploited," Rachel signed to her and stood up. She had eaten about half of her bowl of soup, which was more than she usually managed. "I want to do this. Professor Dent is very kind to me. My grades will bounce back. Good night, Mum." She hugged both her parents and left the room. "We have an amazing daughter," she heard her father say to Angela. "She's smart. She has the sense not to get exploited. You worry too much." She heard her mother sigh. "I worry all the time. That's the curse of being a mother. Maybe if we had a second child, one with lesser problems." "Rachel is fine, darling. We don't have to get ourselves another child to see that." Rachel did not go to her room. This was far too interesting. "Sometimes I wish," Angela said in quite a sad voice, "that she wasn't such a problematic child. I know that sounds horrible, especially since I work with disadvantaged children, but I can't help the way I feel. Sometimes I wish I could turn the clock back." Rachel knew precisely to which moment Angela wanted to turn the clock back. "Rachel's not a problematic child, Ange. She's different, that's all. You just want her to be normal, and I get that, but I think it is wonderful how gifted she is. She could really make an impact on the world." Angela looked up at him. "Daniel, do you know how many times Rachel's new school called today?" 3. "And that's not counting that time I didn't pick up. What's the matter with your daughter, Mrs. Lake? Surely you must know. She's your daughter, isn't she? Do you have any idea how frustrating it is to try to explain again and again that you do not have a clue why your daughter won't speak?" Rachel heard her dad move a chair. She closed further in on them and saw him give her mum a sympathetic kiss. "Of course I know, honey. I'm possibly the only one who does. You're right. It is frustrating. But if it's frustrating for us, can you imagine how frustrating it must be for her?" Angela shrugged. She never seemed to mind much. It all started when Rachel was a proud first-year pupil of Springston's Honourable Primary School. The school took kids with a high IQ in for free. Rachel had passed the IQ test with ease. She was one of 3 children in her class of 10 who was labelled highly gifted. It had all started so well that her mum had almost died with all the excitement and pride. Her dad had been happy as well, but in a less jumpy and noisy kind of way. Then something happened which changed the small family's world entirely. At first, the teachers had thought that Rachel had caught a bad case of stubbornness when she, from one day to another, refused to utter a word. Her parents had not thought much of it either at first, But when several days passed and she still was not speaking, they were severely worried. Nothing had worked on her in the past days. Nothing the school had tried. Patience, impatience, praise, anger, detention, suspension, making her sit by herself, and all the empty threats an entire team of teachers could come up with had had no effect whatsoever. Mum and Dad, too, had tried everything from yelling at her to giving her a cuddle. When she still did not even make a sound, they started to think there was something very wrong with her indeed. They took her to numerous doctors, from their local GP to even a certified brain surgeon, but they all just gave them the same answer. There is nothing medically wrong with your daughter. Try a psychiatrist. And so they did. Rachel was happily participating in all the activities that did not involve using her voice. But when the lady asked her to answer a question, she refused to even try telling her what the problem might be. In the end, her parents went to see a specialist doctor and asked him if it was possible for her brain to forget how to speak. The specialist thought that it might be possible, but highly unlikely. The Leggs decided not to put their 6-year-old daughter through any more tests, but to accept her and love her for who she was now. The school, however, was not so understanding. Some of the teachers kept pressing on Rachel to speak. They kept saying she was a stubborn, defiant, and stupid little girl, and made her sit in a corner. Rachel did not mind. She hardly seemed to mind not being able to speak anymore. She did not mind sitting in the corner much either. It did not keep her from listening. She listened to every word the teacher said very carefully, and weighed it against her own knowledge and values. She aced most of her tests, and some of the teachers praised her for it. The other pupils just thought she was weird. Someone spread the rumor that what she had was contagious, and from then on no one would sit next to her anymore. In all of that, Rachel grew quite lonely, and even more attached to listening to what everyone said. She started keeping little notebooks, in which she noted when someone had said something interesting, no matter if it had been a teacher or a pupil or someone else she happened to listen to on the street. When people asked Rachel why she did not speak, she would only shrug. She learned sign language in 3 weeks and tutored her parents, who were still taking lessons a year after she was fluent in it. She never complained. In fact, she did not seem to mind much. After a while, Daniel Legg grew to be exceptionally proud of his brave little daughter. Rachel was exceptionally proud of her father too. He was a firefighter and had saved many lives. Knowing him as family or friend, you would never have guessed he was a firefighter. He was very clumsy and quite often forgetful, but he was very good at his job. It doesn't matter how I act at home, he told Rachel once. There I can drop everything, literally and figuratively, and no one will get hurt. If I did that at work, someone might die. People are always as strong as they need to be. That made sense to Rachel when she stared through the black frames of her glasses, ignoring the sneering remarks from the children and teachers who seemed to think she had lost her hearing as well as her voice. Teachers never quite seemed to be able to decide whether she was stupid or smart. Some teachers grew very angry at that and gave her extra homework when she would not answer their questions. Some just always gave her a C, no matter what she did. Rachel could have been furious at the injustice of that, but she found that she did not really mind. The teachers were bound to their limited intelligence and, more than that, their limited sense of care. So she could not really blame them for not understanding her. Bad grades did not stop her from learning, and they did not encourage her to study more. In fact, they made no difference whatsoever. Her parents had stopped asking to see her work after her dad had once taken a look at a science essay of hers and understood nothing at all. "I get where your teachers are coming from," he had said, shaking his head. Maybe you could try to make it a little bit simpler? I will never get anywhere if I make everything simpler, she sighed. I want to do big things, change the quality of life on the planet. I don't want to write simple essays for simple teachers. Her father shook his head at her arrogance. But since he principally agreed with her, he did not stop her from treating schoolwork the way she wished to. Rachel had figured out she was adopted at age 7. She told her father a year later. He was surprised, she knew, which in turn surprised her, as it was so obvious. His hair was goldish blonde, her mother's red. His eyes were green, her mother's blue. Rachel's hair was almost black, her eyes were brown. Her father understood that she wanted to meet her birth parents and offered to help her find them, and eventually they did. The man who came out of the big white house when they rang the bell was undoubtedly her birth father. His hair and lips were exactly like hers. They did not tell him who they were. Instead, they asked for directions. Daniel managed to start a conversation with him about his children. Her birth father, who was called Rupert Lind, was a young man of about 30 years. He had married her birth mother, Tara Lind. They had 6 kids, all girls. Tara had taken them out with her mother and mother-in-law for an all-girls trip. When Rachel signed to him, he had no clue what it meant. Her dad had to translate for her. "Are you happy?" Rupert looked at her in surprise. Then he smiled. "Yes, little girl, I'm very happy. My family is wonderful and I have a great job. I could not ask for a better life." This would have been a queer answer out of anyone. But out of her birth father, Rachel found it downright insulting. She asked if she could use his bathroom. He let her into his house. Then he went back outside. It was almost too easy, standing on the windowsill and planting the bug just a tiny bit above the curtain unseen. She took a little time to look around. There were photos everywhere. My mum, Rachel thought, as she tenderly touched the family photos one by one. My sisters. But it sounded wrong in her head. The children were all tiny. She would have been the oldest by about 2 years, she reckoned. 2 of the girls were twins. Her birth parents had been very busy. She left the house with a sad feeling in her heart. "All done?" Rupert asked kindly. Rachel nodded. Then she went over to her dad, her real dad, the blonde one, the firefighter whom she was so proud of, and gave him a hug. Rupert saw them and smiled. "I hope that I'll have such a good relationship with my girls too when they get that age." "Me too," Rachel thought. They drove off, waving. She made a habit of listening in on her birth family every evening before dinner. Rupert had not lied. They were quite a happy bunch. The children's names all began with an H. Hannah, Harriet, Hazel, Helen, Hattie, and Hilly. They were all very pretty, full of life, intelligent, loving children. It was good that her birth sisters were happy and not missing anything. It would not be fair to change that. It was very clear that they did not want or need her. She had never been mentioned. She was not a part of any of their lives. She was not like them either. Neither of her birth parents appeared to have any interest in science. A picture of Jesus hung in their kitchen above the sink, which Rachel found quite ironic. None of the girls were mute. After 3 weeks of listening in on their conversations, Rachel decided it was time to bury them. She deactivated the bug in their room via remote control from her bedroom. Then she buried the remote control in her back garden. Then she went to have dinner with her parents. She never mentioned any of it to them. Professor Dance was quite a strange figure. He took it to heart to represent the stereotype of the nutty professor at school. He always wore colourful suits and amazingly colourful ties, and said things no one else dared or wished to say. Rachel had admired him instantly. She loved that he was different, that he stood out like she did. "Well, class," he had said to 31 new pupils, "welcome to this school. You will love and loathe it, no doubt. Usually at the same time. You will learn things here you never wanted to learn, and you forget them faster than you could imagine. Your goals for the time you spend at this school, and also for the time you spend in my class, should be threefold. Have a bit of fun. Call a teacher rightfully a tosser, and learn something exciting that sticks to your brain like an expensive type of glue. Now, what do you think glue is made of? Almond?" A little boy with bright red hair shot out of his seat and answered, "Skin, bones and hooves of farm animals, sir." "Relax, dear child. No need for getting up and calling me sir. What you said was a correct answer, Almond. Correct answers are boring. Lucas, tell me a wrong answer." "How does he know their names?" Rachel wrote on a piece of paper and passed it over to the girl sitting next to her. Before the girl could answer, Professor Dan suddenly appeared in front of them and snatched it out of the girl's hand. He read it aloud. Before Rachel could get angry, he smiled at her. "I like to inform myself before I get into the cage with the wild animals, but your name seems to have slipped my mind. What was it again?" Rachel scribbled some words on another piece of paper and handed it to him. "Rachel," the paper read, "I don't speak." "Rachel, indeed," the professor said. "Now, Lucas, thought of an answer?" Taken aback, the boy shouted, "Giraffes!" "Giraffes! How wonderful! Now, wherever did you get that idea?" "I think I read it somewhere," the boy said, now suddenly turning pink. "How practical on a scale from 1 to 10 do you think it would be to farm giraffes for glue?" Lucas thought about that for a moment. 5, he then said, looking quite uncertain. 5, grand answer. The boy looked at him in disbelief. "It is?" "Why, of course it is." "Blimey," said Lucas, "I never get anything right. Wait, I'm confused." A pretty girl with a big green bow on her hazel-colored hair said, wrinkling her nose, "Do they make glue from giraffes?" "May do, may not, Rosie. Maybe we'll find out one day." The pretty girl looked more confused than ever, while Rachel could not help but laugh. "Do you find that funny, Rachel?" He had just been standing on the other side of the room talking to Rosie, but suddenly he stood right in front of Rachel's nose. Rachel's giggle could not have made a noise. How did he notice it so fast when he had just been talking to Rosie? She considered her possibilities. 1, lie. 2, tell the truth. 3, faint. She was not loving any of them. "We're all waiting, Rachel." Rachel tried to read his face. He did not seem particularly angry, but then teachers seldom do before punishing their pupils. Rachel did not think that he had any reason to be angry with her, but then again she had often been wrong about that before. Slowly, very slowly, she nodded. "So you did find it funny?" She nodded again. "Why?" This left her at a bit of a difficulty. To her knowledge, he did not understand sign, and writing all of her answer down seemed odd. She had usually just waited until the teachers carried on with their teaching or sent her outside. This one, though, she thought, would not give up easily. "What did you find funny, child?" Slowly, very slowly, she took hold of her pen and brought it down to the paper in front of her. "You are a scientist. You're not meant to question the existence of knowledge." He waited until she had finished writing and then took the note from her. He read it silently. Then he smiled, put it in his pocket, and introduced the class to the world of elements. Whoa, elements. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed that. And if it was a bedtime story for you, I wish you a very pleasant night and many lovely dreams. And if it wasn't, then I wish you a lovely day. And yeah, just write in the comments if you would like to hear or see or read more of this book. Okay, bye!